With the cost of 1 liter of fuel closing in on $2 nationally, a lot of people are starting to think that maybe an EV isn't such a bad idea. Unfortunately, there are a few problems with that search for a new vehicle. A, the sub $40,000 quasi-affordable EV still eludes us. B, there aren't that many to choose from. And C, even if you could choose one right now and put a deposit down, you're not even sure you're going to get it. But even so, and despite all of that, we decided to put together a little comparison test with two of the latest additions to, well, essentially two vehicles that are vying to replace your family crossover at the moment. We were all set, and then this thing came along, which is a really, really good piece of news. I'll tell you that much right now, because we're discovering a lot about these three EVs. Now, because we're a little bit more rushed, slightly less prepared than we would like to be, because you don't say no to Kia EV6 when it just arrived, essentially on the press fleet, and getting an IONIQ 5, it's still, pretty much an occasion, and an ID.4 is about the same thing. But we're going to put together a comparison test, and you're going to like it anyway. So in the following video, we're going to do our usual little walk around of each individual vehicles. Now, I'm telling you right now, there are so many specific differences between these vehicles, even between the two Koreans, that we will not have time to go over all of them. We will touch on some basic ideas, if you will, and then we're going to take them for a spin. I'll make a few comments. And if you want more details, I'm going to tell you right now, because I don't want this video to be 28 minutes long just for the intro. Most of the details are going to be in the review, which will go online on Motor Illustrated eventually. So without further ado, here we go. All right, you'll have to agree with us that the Kia EV6 is an absolute stunner. It looks like nothing else. It really has, I hate to say it, it's futuristic, it's a stunner, it's racy, but it's really, really cool. There are details that you really can't tell unless you get close to them, like the headlights. It's really nuts how they're like kind of cut inwards. But you really, really have to take a quick look at the car to appreciate the efforts that Kia designers put into, well, penning this vehicle. Now, as the camera walks around, just so you know, the wheelbase on the EV6 is 10 centimeters shorter than that of the IONIQ 5, but the overall length, the EV6 is 6 centimeters longer than the IONIQ 5, which is kind of weird, but you can more or less explain, you figure it out once you start looking inside where I got this. All right, so just to give you a quick idea, power trunk, because this is a top trim model, the EV6 has more trunk space, 690 liters over that of the IONIQ 5. The opening is wide, the layout is perfect, it's very accessible, it's deep. I guess it's not a crossover, an SUV, but trunk space wise, it's pretty damn close to one. All right, so shorter wheelbase, right? Once we get into the IONIQ 5, you'll understand what I'm saying, but let's just take a quick look at the materials of the seats. Yes, this is a GT line, so it's fully loaded, but those cloth seats and those like little leather inserts, absolutely to die for. The attention to detail throughout this car is stunning, mind-boggling, and just absolutely makes the price, or explains the price. Now, that is my driving position as per the norm. The only thing you have to be mindful of the EV6 is that the roofline is very low. So when you get in, you gotta kink your neck. But once you're inside, it's not that bad. The legroom, in fact, is enormous. However, if you grab a few bumps, I don't think you can see it maybe, the headroom is very limited. I'm thinking like an inch, 2 centimeters and change. But width-wise, you can pretty much squeeze 3 adults across, if just for a short jaunt. Now, just another shot of the details, the attention, the door cards, the different materials, the Meridian speaker grills. Look at the center console. I don't understand why someone would spend so much time, so much effort in putting, lines and character figures and textures, but my goodness, have Kia gone all out with this vehicle. Now, as I mentioned, the roofline is low, so you really gotta lower your head when you get in, but Immediately you are welcomed in an environment that is just incredible. I mean, I can't get over the textures on the dashboards, the lines. These are not painted. These are like cut and carved. These are painted, but still. Okay, so we started up. We're going to try and make this brief because, like I said, there are infinite things to say about this. If we just focus on a couple of things now. The HVAC controls right here, beautifully laid out. You have like fixed buttons for your cooled heated seats and heated steering wheel. And then you have your typical HVAC controls here, which work fairly well. You can't complain about that really, but when you see, you have the fan and then you have like a little paper aeroplane, right? There you have your other menu buttons for your infotainment system. You got to remember that those are your two options. So you actually have a wheel for the heat, which is kind of weird in a sense because that's not something you see very often anymore. Otherwise, once you get up here, you have your home button, that was nav, and you have your typical Kia / Hyundai layout for your menus. Everything is fairly straightforward. You'll have access to everything. The display in this car is stunning. It's a dual screen setup that is actually curved. So, you know, Cadillac is all boasting about their curved screen. You get this in a Kia too. You can definitely see it right there. It's important to note because that's one of the main differences. Well, there are so many differences between the EV6 and the IONIQ 5's interior. But that gives you a general idea. I mean, the steering wheel is beautiful, flat bottom. You have your drive mode button down here. One really nice touch about the Koreans is that you have your ESC button over here. You can't see it, but it's there. I mean, I think that's enough. I mean, this place is very special, and it's difficult to comprehend how Genesis is going to take this one notch above, but I'm sure they will because the Koreans always find a way. Anyhow, on to the IONIQ 5. Okay, I think maybe I'm going to get a little bit of hate for saying what I'm about to say about the IONIQ 5, but it's so distinct, so different than anything else on the road that it's frozen in time. And this is something that the Hyundai designers and Kia designers have done repeatedly over the last decade, 15 years even, whereas their designs are so bold and so cool that they date themselves immediately. I can't help but see and picture like a first gen Leaf when I see the IONIQ 5. Do you know what I mean? It was so different and it just stuck out. Anyhow, look, the look is incredible, but this whole screen surface, I'm thinking after a few years, I mean, it's going to get pitted, it's going to change color, all of this. But I don't know why I'm saying that because this thing is so damn cool anyway. Okay, so as we continue our walk around, what's really cool about all three vehicles in this comparison test is that they all have 20-inch wheels, but the 20s on the IONIQ 5 look like they're 24s. They look so massive. It's insane. And between you and me, I mean, I'm so sick of these matte colors, but I do admit that it works really, really well in this vehicle, especially because of the two contrasting colors with the flares and the hood, the body panels and all that. But again, the attention to details, which is completely unnecessary, but thank you for freezing the car in time, essentially. I mean, these strakes, these are real. These are not painted on. These are actually carved into the panels. It's completely insane. And while I'm here, so far we've been lucky with these pop-out door handles because, yes, it's been cold, but it hasn't snowed that much. And the cars are in a covered area overnight. But I'm thinking these are going to be terribly, terribly fragile when they do freeze in place. Anyhow, enough about that. But you can kind of see what's going on here where, yes, the EV6 is 6 centimeters longer and this has 10 centimeters more in the wheelbase. But you can see because there's very little overhang back here, which explains why the IONIQ 5 has 531 liters of trunk space only. So it's much, much smaller. What is interesting is that Hyundai wants you to believe that this is your crossover replacement, but it has a smaller trunk than the, I guess, performance luxury sedan replacement that is the EV6. And no, there isn't any space under here to speak of. All right. So same idea here, but I mean, I don't know if you can see that the roof line is much, much taller in the IONIQ 5. And you can see that you know, there's more of a premium feel and less of a sporty feel, and I think that is going to appeal to slightly older crowd. But then again, no matter what the marketing team wants, if they want to address the vehicle to a younger crowd, it's the older people that buy them and vice versa. But anyway, it's the same idea as the EV6, except you don't have to crack your neck in half. The legroom is monstrous. The headroom in here is, well, only marginally taller, and that's mostly to do with the stupid moonroof, but what are you going to do about that? But I normally have the 2 kids seats in here, and there's still plenty of room between the 2 seats. And yes, because this is an Ultimate and the other one is a GT line, they have 2-mode rear heated seats. It's just incredible the amount of equipment. They have to justify the prices, obviously. Now you get a shot of, I don't want to say more conventional because it's still incredibly special, but there's a little bit more of a horizontal thing going on here where everything is perpendicular. The lines are straighter and flatter, but still the overall impression is just so premium. All right, so as I was saying, this is a little bit less of a flashy, a little bit more of a horizontal layout. But still, it's all about utility and ultra functionality. Just down here in the middle, there's a deep pouch, which is actually really cool. I hid my phone in there while we went to lunch. And then there's this center console. I mean, is this a minivan? No, but it looks like a minivan because it feels like a minivan. Because, yeah, that's right. Look at the amount of storage in here. I can put my wife's purse, my things. Never mind. Okay, so let's start it up. Okay, so you have your twin displays like in the EV6, but the difference, as you can see, is that they're completely flat. So no curves in it, but there's still a very high, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at these 2 screens and I'm thinking Benz. It's very, very similar layout. Everything works beautifully well. I mean, here it's kind of the same as in the EV6. You need to know where you want to go. Okay, you have a nice series of buttons. If you want your climate controls, you have to hit the climate. If you want, see warmer, I don't understand why it says warmer, but that's how you have access to your heated steering wheel, your heated seats. So in here, your other climate controls. The redundance is all down here. You have a nice series of buttons to have access to everything else you want. I mean, the steering wheel, I don't understand why. I don't understand why there's 4 dots, right? There's no Hyundai logo, unless that has something to do with IONIQ. Maybe there's a press release I did not read. That's very possible. Here's your drive mode button, by the way. I mean, look, the layout is very straightforward. The ESP button is right there. It's just incredible the amount of effort put into the design and the layout and the functionality. That's really a takeaway from this vehicle. EVs don't have to be extremely complicated. I mean, once you get used to the menus, obviously, right? If you're familiar with Hyundai and Kia menus, there you go. You got your home button, you get there, and then you scroll from one side to the other, depending on what you want to see, and that's it. That's the IONIQ 5. And now on to the Volkswagen ID.4. By far the most conventionally styled of all 3 vehicles in this quick comparison review, but it is still distinctly a Volkswagen looking product. I mean, if you were to hide the logo, you would still guess almost immediately that this is a Volkswagen. And definitely that is, well, appealing to some, maybe not so much to others. And to give you an idea, lengthwise, overall, the ID.4 is about 6 centimeters shorter than the IONIQ 5, which is 6 centimeters shorter than the EV6. So they're all pretty much within the same footprint, just under 5 meters long or 4.9 meters long overall. Now, if we come around to the trunk, this model is a Pro S, as you can see, so it has the statement package, and it does, despite being the shortest, it's still one of the tallest, does have the largest boot. And this is where you get all the space. This is 858 liters of volume, which is almost on par with the boot space in my Golf Sport wagon. Yeah? There is one difference, however. Actually, no, it's not a difference. Compared to the others is what I'm trying to say. You do have a little bit of space under the storage floor, which can be useful. All right, so if we step forward, Volkswagen did things a little bit more naturally, if you will. The door handles don't pop out. It's just a button under here, which is still a little bit, To me, it's unnerving because I'm an old man and I figure that that's just going to break and I won't be able to get in and out of my vehicle, but even so. As the statement package with this color combination, I mean, you can see there's still some nice leather touches. It's far more simple, very good. It's a lot more austere than what you'd find in the Koreans. There's less visual pizzazz, but that doesn't mean that there's no functionality to it. I mean, the opening might be a little bit narrower at the bottom than the other two, but getting in and out of this thing is an absolute breeze, and there's still a considerable amount of legroom back here. And, well, again, because of the stupid sunroof, headroom in the back isn't that great, but it's still pretty good if, just as a matter of reference, I'm this shy of being 5'10", so, you know, but my girlfriend thinks I'm 5'11", but let's not tell anyone. Anyway, okay, so here is what I was just saying about austere, about clean surfaces, about having less fluff. Unfortunately, when it comes to the Volkswagen ID.4, this lack of fluff and buttons does more to hurt it than good. However, you can adapt to it fairly quickly. Okay, so you see the ID.4, where it kind of gets hairy is this. Oh, there we go. Volume. Okay. So that's one advantage. That's interesting because the ID.4 recognizes the key and will start the vehicle when someone is, or turn it on, I should say, not start it, when you're sitting in the seat, which is something that the other two don't do. And admittedly, that is a very, very cool function. If we do start it, just to give you an idea, the shifter is up here. It's that old, BMW i3 kind of layout. I didn't show you on the other ones because it's a little bit more conventional. It's a wheel on one. Anyhow, where it kind of goes out of whack in this vehicle, unfortunately, is working the menus. You'll have seen this everywhere. Everyone is complaining about this. It is almost counterintuitive. No matter what you think you're doing, you might not be doing it right, or you're going to be asking for something else. And not only that, is that often, I'm going to even take my gloves off. Okay. Often it is slow. See, that's what I mean. It is very slow to react. You have to know that that's your home or back button. For your heating controls, they're right here. See, now I confused it, or did I confuse myself? There we go. Okay, so your climate controls. I mean, it's not, you kind of get used to it, but it doesn't always work for you. See now? Okay, well, see, I like it when it doesn't work for me, because that means I'm doing something right and wrong. Let's try it again. There we go. Okay, I want to show you this screen because it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a game because you can select up here and change the different configurations of the driving aids, or you can just hit the lines in the picture. It's kind of neat. I have to say I had kind of a little bit of fun with that. But there's one thing. Now, this is where it kind of gets, I hope I'm going to remember how to do this. I'm not asking for much. Okay, here we go. This, if you want to turn the ESP off, okay, so what you have to do is you go to exterior and then the ID.4 rotates and then the brakes show up and you have to hit the brakes, and that's how you turn the ESP off, which is kind of annoying. The haptic controls on the steering wheel are like the ones in the Tiguan, which work most of the time. The display up here is limited in what it can show you. I'm going to repeat this. I'm pretty sure this thing has kind of a lack of features compared to the other two vehicles, and it's only about, I can math, about $2,500 less expensive than the next cheaper car, which is the IONIQ 5 Ultimate. Anyhow, at this point, I think it's time to go for a drive. Okay, so driving the ID.4 is good. I mean, as far as common 2022 EVs are concerned, I mean, it fits right in the average, which is good and not so good at the same time. I mean, there are a few things that are ultimately frustrating about this. Given its price point compared to the other two, it's only a few grand cheaper, but essentially maybe that's what explains it. This thing lacks features is what it is. And one of them shouldn't actually be a feature. It should be standard on all EVs, and that's multiple brake regen modes. Unlike the Koreans, which have 5 modes, this one only has 2. There's D, which is essentially everything it's in drive and decoupled, so it's coasting. And then there's B. That's it, which is essentially maximum brake regen at all times. It can't be modulated. There are no paddles like you get on the Koreans, or even what you could get in a Bolt and other vehicles. That is a frustrating oversight. And relatedly, there's no one pedal drive possibility with this vehicle because of that. You get used to not one pedal driving, but if you sample one pedal driving, you want one pedal driving. As far as the driving experience is concerned, I mean, look, there are multiple drive modes in here through the infotainment system. So essentially there are, I can't count, 5. But I've been in eco or comfort almost exclusively the whole time that I've been behind the wheel of this thing, because you kind of get into that mindset with an EV. Steering is fine. I mean, the dampening, not so great though. Right, all of these vehicles have 20-inch wheels, low profile tires. But this feels a little bit harsher, over uneven, unperfectly smooth, yes, I know how to speak English, surfaces. I mean, if you go through, a series of slight undulations, you're bouncing around. The dampers are not giving you much as far as that's concerned. So that's frustrating, and it's much better in the 2 Korean vehicles. And the other kind of downside is that if you're not in B, and you get on the brakes, you'll notice, or I'm noticing, a lot of pedal travel, which is, well, a little disconcerting at first. You get used to it as well, but it seems so unnecessary. So anytime you will be in a, city setting like this, you got to go and be, it becomes a good habit to have. So, that kind of offsets itself. Where things get a little bit dicey is that the whole time we've had this ID.4, we've had charging issues. Only yesterday, it was plugged into a level 2 charger for 8 hours and 15 minutes. Now, Volkswagen says you'll get a full charge in 7.5 hours. So yesterday, it went from 20 to 89% in 8 hours and 15 minutes. Which is wrong. Yes, it's cold outside, but still, it wasn't at 0. And we didn't even nudge 90, well, we nudged at 90%. After 8 hours and 58.25 hours. What's more, unfortunately, is that even on a BRCC with a 50 kilowatt hour capacity, which Volkswagen says you should be able to get a 5 to 80% state of charge in about 38 minutes, after 48 minutes, we could do no better than 70 or 72% from a 35% state of charge. It's as though the ID.4 is a little bit timid at first, is not really willing to take more than, I think it was 20 kilowatt hours, which kind of makes it a little bit frustrating, especially given that this vehicle has the shortest range of all 3 in this test. But even so, at over 400 kilometers or around 400 kilometers, it's still reasonably good as long as you can charge without effort, without trouble, complications, or worries. I mean, it's really, really nice, the ID.4, but it falls short, comes up short, and then there's this compared to the other 2. So once more behind the wheel of the IONIQ 5, and it's just clearly and plainly obvious why it receives so much praise and admiration from everyone who comes into contact with it. It just hits absolutely every point. I mean, it doesn't hurt that this is the ultimate version with a dual motor H-track system, so it's all-wheel drive, meaning that with the larger battery, it produces 320 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque, 446, if memory serves. So this thing feels like a rocket. When the IONIQ 5N shows up, forget about it. It's going to be insane. See, so that's a good thing, right? And then it gets better because the driving experience is lovely. I mean, a bunch of drive modes, and I've been driving around almost exclusively in eco and normal, and steering assistance is fine, brake pedal response is great, and the ride quality is excellent. It's better than the ID.4, it's a lot smoother, and obviously then better than the Model Y. And it gets better from there too, because this thing has 5 brake regen modes via the paddles on the steering wheel. You can go from a 0 regen to levels 1, 2, and 3, and then when you're in eco mode, there's a smart pedal or one pedal iPedal driving. If you're normal or sport, you can still use it in a way, whereas you have to hold the left hand paddle, and it'll bring you to a full stop eventually. It'll hold you there as long as you hold the paddle down. And then it just gets better, because the charging experience so far with the IONIQ 5, I'm confusing the names, right? ID.4, IONIQ 5, EV6, really? Great names. Has been excellent. I mean, on level 2, it'll only take about 6 hours and 45 minutes for a full charge, and it's been flawless so far. And on BCC chargers with 50 kilowatt hours or higher, this thing just charges. It's an 800 volt architecture. This one has not generated any issues whatsoever via charging. I mean, and I don't know, what else can I add to that? The drive is just fantastic. You get all the looks. The infotainment, if you're used to any, Kia or even Genesis or Hyundai products, it's fairly intuitive. You move right into it. This thing is just absolutely nice. And the extended wheelbase, again, with the extra dampening, the ride is just beautiful. It's just incredible. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the addition of the Kia EV6 was, a last-minute addition, which is why I'm a little bit less prepared than I would like to be. But thankfully, because it and the IONIQ 5 are fraternal twins, I believe. It has the same 800 volt architecture. It has the same, in this case, because it's a GT line dual motor setup for the same 320 HP, 446 pound-feet of torque. But despite all that, all those identical similarities, whatever you want to call them, it feels so different. The calibration, the chassis calibration is just a notch more dynamic, but never harsh. It sits somewhere between the ID.4 and the IONIQ 5, but without being, a little aggravating over repeatedly uneven surfaces like the ID.4. Once again, much better than the Model Y. Steering, like I'm trying to say, is just a little bit sharper, and I'm in eco drive mode. And on that subject, this thing has all the same advantages and highlights that the IONIQ 5 has, namely the 5 brake regen modes, including the one pedal drive. It has the same super fast charge times. They vary slightly, but we're talking a few minutes here and there, so it doesn't really matter. But the takeaway is that this thing seems like it's far more agile, nimbler, sharper, more alive than the IONIQ 5, which essentially leads me to conclude that this, or say the IONIQ 5 is meant to replace your family crossover / SUV. That's what that's all about. It's obvious. Whereas this is meant to replace your premium sedan or family sedan with something that might not be as, functional or utilitarian, but very interesting to drive. The EV6 and the IONIQ 5 are a demonstration of extra engineering or decision making, and corner cutting, we'll see about that in the near future, I am certain of. But the amount of time that was invested in these same vehicles to make them so different is truly remarkable. I'm blown away by this. I am totally enamored with this vehicle, more so than the IONIQ 5. All right, so here's the conclusion after one day of driving. There is no winner in this comparison test, because even if you put your money down on that one or this one, you're not entirely sure when you're going to get it, and if you're going to get the one you want, and Oof, if it won't sink to the bottom of the ocean after a prolonged fire on a ship, but never mind what I just said. The point is that all of three of these vehicles start at about $45,000 Canadian. They all top out somewhere between 58 and 62, so they're all priced identical. In fact, today our test loop was just about 150 kilometers, and they average between 28 and 29 kilowatt hours in the same conditions with the same drivers going the same speeds and all of that. They're more or less all the same size, They just have slightly different personalities. So it really depends on what you prefer for now, because obviously the long-term reliability, we have no idea what it's going to look like. Yes, I've mentioned many times in the past that Korean products kind of scare me after a little while, but then again, you know, the ones over at the end over there are not exactly known for having the greatest reliability record either. So what it really comes down to is, like I just said, personality, styling. You want something that's retro cool, that has a little bit of an Italian Lancia Delta flair to it. Yeah, no, I did go there. But it's definitely going to be purchased by older people, like me, I guess, because we have kids and responsibilities. There you go. Are you a young up-and-comer and you're all, you know, about EVs and styling and looking like you're going fast? And well, here you go. This is it. I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. I think this is the prettiest of the three. There's so much going on visually. I mean, these headlights blow my mind. I don't understand why, but they just do. And then, if you're a little bit more pragmatic, relaxed, you know, and you want something that will still stand out in a parking lot, a little bit more conventionally styled, Volkswagen ID.4. That's it. That's the conclusion. Oh, Mach-E, I'm not a huge fan of it. I might be one of the very few people that feel that way, especially if you get a base model and a white trim. It looks like a rental car. That won't happen to any of these. I promise you that much. And then there's the Model Y, which is completely priced out compared to these. I mean, it's about 30 grand more to start compared to these three. However, if you place an order today, you might get it in 2 to 4 weeks. So you'll have to make a choice.